World War I, also known as the Great War, engulfed Europe from 1914 to 1918. The seeds of this war were sown in the decades leading up to its outbreak, as European nations engaged in a web of alliances and rivalries. Nationalism, imperialism, and militarism fueled these tensions. Nationalism fanned the flames of conflict as European powers jostled for dominance. Imperialism fueled competition for resources and territories. Militarism glorified military strength and the belief that war was necessary. A complex network of alliances emerged, entangling Europe in commitments with far-reaching consequences. On June 28, 1914, a seemingly insignificant event in the Balkans ignited European tensions. Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. The assassination set off a chain of events with catastrophic consequences. Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia demanding humiliating concessions. Serbia sought support from Russia. Germany pledged support to Austria-Hungary. Diplomatic efforts failed, drawing Europe into conflict. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, marking the start of World War I. With the outbreak of war, Europe found itself divided into two opposing camps. The Central Powers consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, and the Allied powers led by France, Russia, and Great Britain. Italy, initially aligned with the Central Powers, joined the Allied side in 1915, while the United States remained neutral until 1917, when it entered the war on the side of the Allies. The early months of the war were marked by a series of rapid German advances on the Western Front, as German forces swept through Belgium and into northern France. However, the German advance was halted at the First Battle of the Marne, fought near Paris in September 1914. The battle marked the end of mobile warfare on the Western Front, as both sides dug in, constructing elaborate trench systems that would stretch for hundreds of miles across northeastern France. The Western Front became synonymous with the horrors of trench warfare, a brutal and attritional form of combat characterized by prolonged periods of stalemate, punctuated by bloody offensives that resulted in staggering casualties. Life in the trenches was a miserable existence, as soldiers endured constant shelling, machine gun fire, and the ever-present threat of disease. One of the most infamous battles of the Western Front was the Battle of the Somme, fought between July and November 1916. The battle, which lasted for over 4 months, was one of the bloodiest in human history, resulting in over 1 million casualties on both sides. Despite the massive losses, the battle resulted in only minor territorial gains, highlighting the futility of trench warfare. Section 5. Technological advancements, new weapons of war. World War I witnessed an unprecedented escalation in the development and deployment of new technologies, many of which had a devastating impact on the battlefield. Machine guns capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute transformed warfare, making it virtually impossible for troops to advance across open ground. Artillery, more powerful and accurate than ever before, rained down death and destruction from afar, obliterating trenches and inflicting heavy casualties on both sides. Chemical weapons, including chlorine and mustard gas, were used for the first time in warfare, introducing a horrifying new dimension to the conflict. These weapons, which caused agonizing burns and respiratory problems, were particularly effective in trench warfare, where they could linger in the confined spaces, inflicting indiscriminate suffering on soldiers and civilians alike. The use of chemical weapons was widely condemned as a violation of the rules of war, yet their use continued throughout the conflict. Section 6. The Eastern Front, a different kind of conflict. While the Western Front was characterized by its static trench warfare, the Eastern Front, which stretched from the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south, was a more fluid and mobile affair. Vast distances, harsh weather conditions, and the lack of adequate infrastructure made it difficult for either side to establish and maintain a continuous front line. As a result, the Eastern Front witnessed sweeping advances and retreats, as well as brutal battles fought over vast swaths of territory. The Russian army, though large in number, was poorly equipped and led, and suffered heavy casualties in the early years of the war. However, the Russians fought with determination and resilience, tying down vast numbers of German and Austro-Hungarian troops that might otherwise have been deployed on the Western Front. The Eastern Front also witnessed the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917, following the Bolshevik Revolution and the subsequent withdrawal of Russia from the war. Section 7. Global conflict. The war beyond Europe. While the main theatres of war were in Europe, World War I was a global conflict, with fighting taking place in Africa, Asia and the Middle East. Colonial troops from Africa, India and other parts of the world were drawn into the conflict, fighting on behalf of their European overlords. The war also had a profound impact on the Middle East, leading to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the redrawing of the map of the region. The Ottoman Empire, which joined the war on the side of the Central Powers, fought against the Allied powers in the Balkans, the Caucasus and the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire's entry into the war had significant consequences, closing off Allied access to the Black Sea and threatening British interests in Egypt and the Suez Canal. The Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I marked the end of a once mighty empire and paved the way for the emergence of new nation-states in the Middle East. Section 8. The tide turns, America enters the fray. In 1917, the United States, which had remained neutral for the first 3 years of the war, entered the conflict on the side of the Allied powers. The American entry into the war was a turning point in the conflict, providing a much-needed boost to the Allied war effort. The United States' vast industrial capacity and manpower resources helped to tip the balance of power in favor of the Allies. The United States' entry into the war was prompted by a number of factors, including Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare campaign, which had resulted in the sinking of American merchant ships, and the Zimmermann telegram, a secret diplomatic cable intercepted by British intelligence, in which Germany proposed an alliance with Mexico against the United States. The American declaration of war on Germany on April 6, 1917, marked a decisive moment in the conflict, signaling the eventual defeat of the Central Powers. Section 9. The collapse of empires, the end of World War I. By 1918, the Central Powers, exhausted and facing defeat on multiple fronts, began to crumble. Germany, its economy in ruins and its army on the verge of collapse, faced growing unrest at home. Austria-Hungary, torn apart by internal divisions and facing defeat on the battlefield, dissolved into its constituent parts. The Ottoman Empire, defeated by British and Allied forces, was forced to surrender. On November 11, 1918, Germany signed the Armistice of Compiègne, officially ending World War I. The war, which had claimed the lives of millions and devastated Europe, was finally over. In the aftermath of the conflict, the victorious Allied powers met in Paris to negotiate a peace settlement that would shape the post-war world. Section 10, the Treaty of Versailles, a flawed peace. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was the most important of the peace treaties that brought World War I to an end. The treaty, which was imposed on Germany by the victorious Allied powers, was highly punitive and controversial. It blamed Germany for the war and imposed harsh reparations payments on the defeated nation. The treaty also stripped Germany of its colonies, reduced its military strength, and forced it to cede territory to neighboring countries. The Treaty of Versailles was met with outrage in Germany, where it was seen as a humiliating and unjust diktat. Many historians believe that the treaty's harsh terms contributed to the rise of extremism and nationalism in Germany, which ultimately led to the outbreak of World War II. Section 11. The enduring legacy of World War I. World War I had a profound and lasting impact on the world, transforming the political, social, and economic landscape of the 20th century. The war led to the collapse of empires, the redrawing of national boundaries, and the rise of new ideologies, including communism and fascism. It also ushered in an era of technological innovation, social change, and global interconnectedness. The war's legacy continues to shape the world we live in today, serving as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in preventing future tragedies. The lessons learned from World War I remain as relevant as ever, urging us to strive for a more peaceful and just world. If you enjoyed this crash course on World War I, be sure to like, subscribe and leave a comment below.